to Champion Life TV. We are so glad that you tuned in today. There's a great message in store, so let's go straight to Pastor Eddie.
The third person at the table is found in verse 14. Then Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 disciples, went to the leading priest and asked, "How much will you pay me to betray Jesus to you?" And they gave him 30 pieces of silver. From that time on, Jesus began looking for the right time and place to betray Jesus. I think today that you and we read this story of this experience of Jesus around a table, and we can absolutely say, yeah, come on, Jesus, when he invites somebody with a sickness, disease, people that are less than perfect in their physical being, their bodies. We're like, yeah, I can get my mind wrapped around that. Absolutely. I think we can all say, yeah, Jesus, good job, the woman with a less than a socially acceptable past. I think there's many of us that if we got real honest about some of the experiences of our past, some of the things, the roads that we've traveled, we might fit into a category similar to that. I think we can all get our hearts and minds wrapped around that to embrace that. But Jesus, he invites a person who is trying to betray him to the table. Now that is something I think most of us have a difficult time understanding. Again, one day when I was at the table growing up, it was the middle of the day. This time my dad's not in the house. He's out working on the ranch. I'm probably 12, 13 years old, somewhere around there. And I was a pretty bad to the bone guy. I think we got a picture of it here. I'm sitting at the table, so I'm kind of the man at the table at this moment. And one of my foster brothers says to me, he was giving my mom lip, actually. He was giving my mom a hard time, and of course, I'm the guy that's not going to allow that to happen. So I tell him to shut his mouth. His response, as he had actually said this to me several times he'd been living with us for probably maybe 3 or 4 months at that time, something like that. He had actually told me multiple times over those 3 or 4 months that he was going to kill me. I would say something to him like, knock it off. He'd say, I'll kill you. I'll shoot you. I'm like, dude, I'll bury you behind the barn in the pile of, agricultural stuff, byproduct. And so he says this at the table. And my mom hears this and says, honey, she's talking to me, she says, son, Eddie, don't worry about it. And I'm like, Mom, I'm not going to allow him to talk like that. He's not going to talk to you like that. She goes, honey, would you help me in the kitchen? I go, yeah. So I go wandering in the kitchen with her. And she says, son, do you know why he's with us? Do you know why he's living in our home? I said, well, I can guess. With a mouth like that, his parents wanted him to get rid of him. And she said, no, that's not why he's at our house. He's at our house because he shot his brother in the back with a gun. And he's about 13 years old. He's at our house because he shot his brother in the back with a gun. And I'm like, okay, now let's replay this, okay? Guess what's going on in my mind? I'm thinking about how many times this kid has said to me that he was going to kill me. Put that together with the fact we're on a ranch and we have guns all over the house. I'm thinking, so my mind in that moment, I went through a series of emotions. I went through a series of, at first I'm thinking about all of that. Then it hit me. How could you, I asked the question, did you know that in advance? She goes, well, of course we knew. We asked for him on purpose. And I got to tell you, for a young kid to hear, we asked for this kid on purpose. Why would you do that? Now I'm upset at my mom. I'm thinking, wait a minute, you invited him into our house, and he is known, and I'm just like trying to connect the dots, and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I start to get upset at my mom. My mom says, honey, you'd have to know about his past. You'd have to know his story. See, he was abused by stepfathers. His real father had died. He had been abandoned. If we didn't take him, he was going to end up in juvie and be ultimately held and then maybe tried as, depending on the outcome. This wasn't the only thing in the story. She said, that's why he's at the table. It was unacceptable to us that he would have to go down that road. We know we can help him. Now, I will tell you one thing that I did during that time. After that, can anybody tell what I did? Guess what I did? He became my best friend. Yeah. And I never turned my back on him again. Now, here's what come out of that whole experience. My mom says to me, son, do you know why this person's at our table, and that person's at our table, and that person's at our... I go, I don't have any idea. It had never crossed my mind. See, they started coming, foster children started coming to our house 8 years before I got there. They had been there long before I got there. I don't know. Why are they here? She started to go around the table. Now, we're in the kitchen, but she's talking her way around the table. This young lady was sexually abused. This person, their parents died in a car accident. They have no one. This person, and went around the table, and I got to tell you, it changed my life forever. It took me a while to process that. It wasn't that meaningful necessarily in that moment, but it took a while, and eventually I understood. Unbelievable. So that's kind of the table I was raised at. And I promise you, that would be the type of table that Jesus would find his way to. A place where people with sickness and disease and social unacceptable pasts were welcome at the table. I've said this before, that the church is the table where people come to be fed. The church is the table where people come to be fed. We're here as a church, and we're preparing a table. And the reality is today, you may not necessarily understand why other people are at the table. You look around to everybody else like they're perfect, and you know your past, and you know what's going on in your life. And a pastor and our key leaders have this unique perspective because we know your individual stories. And if I was today, our table obviously today is much, much bigger. There's 500 or 600 of us in the church that call ourselves Champion Life Church. But if we made our way around the table, I could tell you stories about this person and how they ended up here at Champion Life Church. They have things going on in their life. I could tell you the story about people that have a less than socially acceptable past and how they made their way here to Champion Life Church. Good. I could tell you also people that are here that have had betrayal in their life or betrayed others in their life. And the reality is that there's people here today that are here for all those reasons. But there is the reality that it's possible that you've been betrayed in your life. And if you've been betrayed in your life, then you have the potential of betraying others because that experience places seeds in your life. And you'll need to deal with that, and we'll help you deal with that over time as you hang out here at the family of God at our table.